Hey, this is Chad with Drawn and Cornered. It is December 10th, 2021, and here is your news for today. The verdict in the Jussie Smollett case finally came through. Turns out guilty, 5 counts. Some of them carry pretty hefty fines, $25,000, up to, I want to say, 3 to 5 years in prison. But we'll see what the sentencing is. But guilty. Guilty of lying, guilty of obstruction, disorderly conduct because of the lies, things like that. All because in 2019, during one of the coldest nights Chicago has seen in years, Jussie Smollett said that he was out getting a Subway sandwich, was attacked by 2 white men wearing MAGA hats, saying, "This is MAGA country," that put a noose over his head, poured bleach on him, and beat him up a little bit. Right from Jump Street, the case seemed a little off just because Chicago is not MAGA country at all. I don't think even the most ardent of Trump supporters or MAGA supporters would have the audacity to say that Chicago is MAGA country. Um, all coupled with the fact that it's, 2 o'clock in the morning, it's a freezing cold morning to get a sandwich. Like, the story just had holes in it, seemed a little bit loose all the way through. Outpouring of support from the left about just how awful these homophobic and racist rants were. Everybody coming to support, which is not necessarily a bad tendency. It's not a bad tendency to support people who appear to be victims, and we should seemingly, at least initially, kind of take them at their word until we see otherwise. There was enough in this case to kind of at least be skeptical right off the bat. Not that that diminishes the amount of compassion you have towards somebody who could have gone through something like this, but absolutely a little keener eye was in order. All of that followed through as the story started to unravel, and this is where it got really dangerous. As that story started to unravel, he doubled down. He consistently said they're wrong, actually blamed the cops for being racist towards him, and kind of pushed this narrative that the only reason he's not getting the justice that he deserves with this totally outlandish case is because he's a black homosexual man. Now, that fits nicely into a narrative of a lot of people that want to believe that America is a deeply racist, systemically racist, that cops are racist and homophobic and all these things, that there are still massive problems on an institutional level with these issues. And as that narrative continues to be filtered forward, you start to see the chasm between people who believe that America is generally good, that this story actually doesn't make any sense, and the fact that people are backing him up without having evidence to show this is counterproductive to real claims of racism that are out there and are present all over the world and all over this country. But when your story starts falling apart, and then you consistently back it up to even further see it fall apart, it dissolves the believability of everybody who comes after you, who may or may not have an accurate claim, and that was the problem. So he got his guilty verdict. Now, this is how this should happen. There are already claims that say that the only reason that Jussie Smollett would get convicted and have any sort of sentence on this is because he's a black homosexual man. So even finding that this story is total garbage because the attackers were actually friends of Jussie Smollett, paid by Jussie Smollett, to black Nigerian actors themselves, and not white MAGA hat wearing Trump supporters. Even after all that comes out, there's still a racism and homophobic narrative to be made by holding him accountable for those lies. But he needs to be held accountable for those lies, and he needs to be held accountable in dramatic fashion. It doesn't have to be outrageous. It doesn't even have to be necessarily punitive to the level of anything outside of the laws that he actually broke. But it needs to happen, and it needs to happen because if you punish those who lie about it, it makes those who come forward afterwards seem more credible because they wouldn't dare lie about it because you get punished for that. So it builds credibility rather than taking away credibility. If he gets off for this, if he walks, and I mean, even if that's a fine, if it's just a fine and probation outside of jail or prison, that's a problem, because then everybody who comes up afterwards, there's a little bit of like, well, it's not that big of a deal if you lie about it. So is this accurate? And especially if you've got a story that's hard to believe, and it could be a completely accurate story. If you've got an accurate story that's kind of hard to believe, if you made the mistake and were out at 2 o'clock in the morning on the coldest night in Chicago and did get attacked, and everybody's like, why were you out at 2 o'clock in the morning? If this punishment comes through for Jussie Smollett, it makes your story more believable. And that's why it's important that he gets charged with this. That's why it's important that he does time for this, because that punishment needs to fit the amount of belief everybody put in him. And we put a ton of belief in him on that story. We did a ton of movement towards his side on that story because we didn't want anything like that to be true. We didn't want anything like that to be happening in our city, in our towns, in our states, in our country. We rallied behind him because we were all opposed to that idea. And if you lie to us, if you burn us on that, then you need to pay, because it's not just an individual thing. It's not just the cops that you're taking down. It's not just the city that you're taking down. It's not just politicians that you're making look foolish. It's all of us who believed in you or thought that that's not something that should happen in our country, and we're willing to fight for you against that. That's where that problem is. So I'll be very curious to see how the sentencing goes on this. I've heard from a few folks that even a short term in Cook County would be enough to make this seem like something you don't want to do again. Anytime really in Cook County prison is probably enough to deter most people, especially soft actors that apparently make up their entire stories. So that's what's out there right now. Hit a mark yesterday that I don't think anybody really wants to hit, the highest monthly inflationary level in almost 40 years. This is a problem. This is going to be a continuing problem for the Joe Biden administration, because as you're talking about putting tons more dollars into the economy, having high inflation actually should turn you around the opposite way. The fact that we're dealing with such monstrous inflation tells you that what we shouldn't be doing is pumping more money in. What we should be doing is taking off the shackles of this economy and allowing it to kind of do what it's supposed to do and roar back and come back with some life. Continuing to pay people to stay at home, continuing to offset any sort of issues that people are having with payments, whether that's rental, whether that's college loans, all that. It all needs to go away. We need to get back to the economy that we had, let's say, in February or January of 2020. That's the direction that we should be headed. And pumping more money in through the government is only going to make this problem worse, is only going to exacerbate this issue, is only going to make any sort of wage increases, any sort of new jobs diminish in value, because you're actually losing money when you compare it back to inflation that is consistently rising. So that shouldn't happen. The last story for you, and this may be a big deal. It kind of depends. The UK has finally decided that extradition for Julian Assange can go through. They said essentially the US can ask for extradition of Julian Assange back. If he comes back in, the espionage claims, the WikiLeaks founder is going to be kind of put on a rack. There's just too many powerful people that are too upset about the things that he released. There are too many secrets that were let out. Some of them even on the edge of extraordinarily dangerous for some of the people involved. And I don't just mean criminally, I mean like legitimately physically dangerous to get some of this information out there, because as our enemies get that information, it tells them a lot about the way that we operate in clandestine operations, through our operational capabilities, all of that. It's just too much information out there that on a national security level that Julian Assange let out. So it'll be curious to see if that extradition takes place in the court case that could have gone down 10 years ago, and somebody who was instrumental in Hillary's defeat in 2016 could be brought to justice for his actions. So keep an eye on that. Thank you very much for watching today. This is Chad with Drawn and Cornered. If you like this sort of thing with a little bit of news, a little bit of analysis, just a bite-sized morsel for your day so that you have all the news that you need to carry forward, definitely subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell so you get notifications anytime we upload a new video, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We will see you on the weekends if anything new happens. If you would like to comment, critique, tell me I'm crazy, leave that comment down below. Thank you again for watching. This is Chad with Drawn and Cornered, and I will see you on Monday.